Alright, so some of you guys have been asking me about the chickens and what's the status with them now. There's one of the roosters, but this is the chicken house that I have set up for them. It's a very big shed, far bigger than they need. It was actually set up as a goat barn. I don't even have laying boxes for them yet. You can see their perches there. A lot of them end up perching up on the rafters at night. I've got a double door there. They all think they're getting fed, so they're running over here now. This door I usually keep open for them. And this is their run. As you can see, it's pretty large. You can probably kind of see my truck way down there in the distance at the back fence. This is probably a 1/20th of an acre, a typical really small suburban backyard. So they have a lot of space back here, and I'll take you back there in a second. As you can hear, if you've heard them when they were young, they've gotten better at crowing. And actually, I have probably a need to slaughter some of the cockerels soon, even though they're not as big as I'd like them. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But come over here. Who were saying, are you doing the coop and run thing? And the answer is I'm doing a mix. I'm doing actually a free-range coop and run mix. Right now, they have access to this entire pasture of about an acre. They can go anywhere they want. And during the heat of the day, even if I keep it wide open, they stay down by those trees that they were at down there. I'll show you in a second. They've got all kinds of clumps to go exploring, insects to eat and things like that. But then over here, I've shown this in some other videos, these people had goats, and they had this little goat pen set up. And the birds really liked coming in here, but there were a lot of weeds in here they just didn't want anything to do with. So what I ended up doing finally is I broke down and I used a tiller and I tilled it. You bet, buddy, I tilled it. I'm not a big tiller person, but initial establishment, yep, I tilled it. And this will get planted with all kinds of crazy stuff. Everything from black-eyed peas to corn, sorghum, you name it. Mostly stuff for the birds. And ever since I've tilled it, they've been in here every day for about a week. And there's a few places where some stuff is really kind of needs to be hacked up before I plant it. But I'm going to plant it as soon as I get done with this video. I'll bring my road hoe in here and pull up those few spots of green. And then I'm going to plant this. And it's pretty good looking soil, you can see right there. And I'm going to plant this with stuff, and I'll shut this door. And this will stay shut till I feel like letting them in again. And I'll talk about what I'm going to plant and why in a second in there when you see some of the other things that are going on. So my initial thought was this big run here to cross fence it into about 4 or 5 paddocks. But then I thought, you know what, Jeff Lawton might show up here when he does and go, right, that all needs to go. And there might not be a run here anymore by the time he's done. So then I've got all that infrastructure put in. So what I've come up with, I call this like a chinampa. It's like a reverse chinampa. It doesn't use water, it uses chickens. And you can see all that green down there, that's mostly amaranth and millet and some buckwheat coming up. So I let the birds do all this work for me. And I set up these little rings of chicken wire. And I seeded them with greens for the chickens to keep them out. And yeah, they could get up in there. They just don't seem to want to. And by the time it's enticing enough that they want to, I'll probably let them have it anyway. And the plan is, when this is greened up enough, and it looks like something that they would want to eat, I'll pull these posts, which trust me, they're not far in the ground. In fact, where's the one there? You can see the shape that one's in. It's not exactly straight anymore. That's trying to pound in the ground. If you look at the bottom, you can see the bottom of the T-post. These things are only a couple inches in the ground. Just keep the wind from blowing them over. So as this gets green enough that it has enough to offer these birds, I'll just let them have it. And I'll just move it, the little loop over one layer, and do it again. And do it again, and do it again. And some of these places with some of this weeds, they will not take out. Yeah, I'll till it once. So I'll till that right there once. There's my pounder, which is kind of pointless with the rock that's underneath here. But this weed here, I can't remember what this is called, but they will not touch this. He's upset there. So I'll till right here, and I'll go ahead and I'll do 2 more of these this weekend, and I'll do 2 of these every week until there's about 10 of them in here. And then about every week, once we're about 5 weeks in, we'll be giving them access to 2 of the areas. So it'll be kind of like a reverse paddock situation. And it's kind of got me, this got me on this was the fodder systems. And I'm like, why should I bring the fodder to the chickens when I can grow it right here? It's all weeded by the chickens. It's all fertilized by the chickens. They keep the ground. I mean, look at the ground here. They keep the ground all nice and loosened up. So that's the plan there. And then the other thing is I've planted about 4 mammoth sunflowers in a circle inside each one of these, and I'll continue doing that, and I'll tell you why. Look at that. That's a volunteer sunflower. So is that. So is that. It's volunteer sunflower all in here. these birds will not touch a sunflower plant. So by the time these mammoth sunflowers are established and I let them in here, they will leave them alone and let them grow as these other ones have. And at the end of the year, I'll just drop the heads to the ground for them, and they'll have another yield for the chickens. So that's what I'm doing there. What is this here? What do I got going on here? This is just an old cattle panel that was left here, and it was actually wrapped around this tree because the goats were ringing this tree. Well, when I disconnected it from the tree, it just kind of landed in this covered wagon fashion. So this gives them some protection from hawks because they love to stay under this tree anyway. And I think you can see if a hawk came down and hit this panel, he's going to have a bad day. We haven't any real problems with hawks, but that helps out. Now, I was talking about these guys here. I have 6 of these Egyptian Failme cockerels. And they're getting to a stage now where they're completely disrupting the flock. They're fighting with each other. They're harassing the hens. And they're making the hens, which are pretty docile birds, into pretty non-docile birds. I mean, last night I just had to kind of work with my hens because they'd gotten to the point where, like, when I tried to touch them, they were biting at me because they were so riled up. So, yeah, keep it up. You are going to end up on the grill very, very soon, even though you're not quite as large as I'd like you to be, because I just have too many roosters in this. My other option would be to maybe go back to tractoring them, take maybe 5 of the 6 and put them in a tractor together. They won't really harm each other that much if there's no hens to fight over, but after they've had this freedom for so long, I don't really feel good about tractoring them. I feel much better about turning them into something delicious to eat, and I'll have to pick the one that's the least of a jerk to let and see if he wants to be the flock rooster. But what I'm actually thinking about doing is going ahead and taking them down to 2 initially and see how that does and see if I can get better growth out of the last one. But 6 is way too many in a flock of only 16 birds. That means I've got 10 pullets and 6 cockerels, and that's just not a good mix, so they're going to have to go. But this is the plan, and it's not even really a big plan. I'm just playing with this, guys, just seeing what happens. And there's a lot more birds under there than you think, by the way. Let's wake everybody up. Come on, guys, come out and say hello. So, see, there's some of my my pullets there. And this is, oh, real cool, yeah. So, I went to using chicken nipples, specifically the Avian Aquamizer, with these 5-gallon buckets, and it only took them a day to get on these nipples. They had always had conventional waterers, and I put a bucket out here, and they didn't, they didn't look like they knew what to do with it at first. So I took their water away in the evening, gave them no water for an evening, brought them out in the morning, and showed them how the nipples work. I basically just went and just did this and showed them that water would come out if you tapped it. And once I did that, they all kind of got it. Didn't you guys? You all got it. And started using it. So that's worked out well. I had one more thing I wanted to show you, but I'm not sure I can remember what it was. So I think I'll wrap up there, and if I do, I remember what it was. This is this feeder. So I have a 7.5 pound feeder hanging here. We fill that about once every 10 days. We're not even using 7.5 pounds a week for 16 birds. So even though they've really wiped this area down, and I wanted them to, they're still getting a tremendous amount of their feed off the land. You can see that pasture out there is really nice, and they pretty much hang in here during the day, and they're pretty much free to go out there anytime they want to. Some days, if I want to control them a little bit, I don't let them out till about 4 o'clock. But as you can hear, the flock has matured, and it's soon time for some of them to graduate into tasty, delicious chicken on the grill. But I'm expecting eggs probably in the next 4 or 5 weeks. Some of my pullets will start to lay. I'll check in with you on an update on everything that's going on in a bit.